Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, we'll kick things off talking about PlayStation Vita emulation on Android with Vita3k, and yes, Vita3k's got a brand new release. Now, I'm not joking with you here, this update is absolutely huge. It's Android release number 8. We've got performance improvements, optimizations, bug fixes, brand new features, and also compatibility improvements. They've implemented a motion sensor. If you've got a connected controller that has motion sensors, these will be used. Otherwise, your device motion sensors will be used. They added in a render accuracy option. They added an option to create a shortcut for each game. They fixed FMV flickering. They fixed freezes when using the double buffer. Memory mapping can now be configured on a per game basis. They rewrote the texture cache architecture that should help games from becoming slower over time. They've improved controller support, and there's multiple performance improvements. On top of that, they rebased this with the PC version of Vita3k, which means we've got touchpad support for PS4 and PS5 controllers, but they haven't fully tested that out just yet. We've got translation improvements. MacDo implemented buffers that were used by World of Final Fantasy and Gundam Breaker 3. They've implemented controller rebinding. They fixed most 3D Unity games in JSTAR. Now, I'm not quite sure on how I feel about this one, but some people love distorted graphics, and they added an option to stretch the gameplay to fit the entire screen. Now, something worth pointing out here, and this is pretty big, the new render accuracy option may help significantly improve performance. By default, all previous versions of Vita3k on Android were set to high rendering accuracy. And by default now, it's set to standard, which decreases the amount of memory used and improves performance. This can cause some small graphical glitches in some games, but they do recommend setting it to standard and keeping it that way. This is the first release of Vita3k since the end of July, and the developers absolutely delivered on this. It's amazing. If you're using version 7, you may want to consider using version 8. I'll drop a link to it in the description below. Moving on, and we're talking about Nintendo Switch emulation on PC with Yuzu, and Yuzu just released a small but nice update. So interestingly enough, this update was applied to both the paid testing early access version of Yuzu and the free mainline build, and it fixes a memory leak in The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom and possibly other games. So if you're playing Tears of the Kingdom, this might be an update you want to grab. Moving on, and we're talking about emulation on the Steam Deck with Emudeck, and Emudeck has just teased a brand new update that is a little bit cryptic. So let me know in the comments below what you make of this. We've got a My Little Pony, we've got a Beta Fish, we've got the Windows XP background, and we've got Justin Long. Emudeck spoilers without context. Now, I could be wrong here, but it might have to do with something about Pegasus, which is a front end, and I'm assuming the Windows means Windows and Justin Long means Mac because he used to do those Apple commercials. Again, I could be wrong. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Moving on, and we're quickly talking about PS1 emulation with Duckstation. And Duckstation has just released a brand new preview build, their experimental testing build. Taking a look at this one, it appears there are some bug fixes and some optimizations. I'll drop a link to it in the description below in the event that you want to check it out. Next up, we're talking about Igir, which is a ROM collection manager to help filter, sort, patch, archive, and report on all of your ROMs on pretty much any OS. In terms of development, Igir is pretty active. Last week they released version 2, and they're already up to version 2.0.4. In version 2.0.1 here, there's a new option to control grouping ROMs by their game name. And in version 2.0.3, they allow for incomplete ROM sets. Igir is free, it's open source, it's available for Windows, Mac, and Linux, and I'll drop a link to it in the description below. Feel free to check it out. And speaking about working on almost any OS, next up we're talking about Emulicious. Emulicious is a multi-system emulator for the Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Sega Master System, Game Gear, MSX, and also MSX2. And it's written in Java, so if your operating system supports Java, it'll run Emulicious. and Emulicious just got a brand new update. Now, there aren't any new features with this release, but there are a whole bunch of bug fixes and one that fixes a memory leak. If you want to take a look at it, I'll drop a link to it in the description below. Moving on, and we're quickly talking about the Evercade, and if you've got one of these or you planned on picking one up, there's something you need to know about Atari games. At the end of December of this year, Evercade's contract with Atari comes to an end. As such, Atari Collection 1 and 2, Lynx Collection 1 and 2, and Arcade 1 will no longer be produced. Stock is still available, but it won't be replenished. Moving on, and this is a quick one. SNK vs. Capcom on the Commodore 64 has just been released. I'll drop a link to this YouTube video in the description below, and you can find pretty much everything you need to know there, including how this game actually works on the C64. Next up here, we're talking about PSP emulation with PPSSPP. And this one is quick, but highly interesting. If you're looking for CHD support within PPSSPP, it appears they are working on it. So as of version 1.16.5-25, we can see they merged a pull request here for libchdr support, CHD support through libchdr. So Henrik, the main developer, says, yes, I'm adding basic CHD support. You asked for it, you got it, but I still recommend CSO. I'm just tired of the complaints and it's just not that hard to do. So if you're looking for basic CHD support, go on ahead and check out the latest version of PPSSPP. You might be surprised. And speaking about adding new features, next up we're talking about Wii and GameCube emulation with Dolphin. And if you head to dolphin-emu.org and click on download, and scroll down to the latest development build, actually the second latest development build, it says here, Retro Achievements Progress Notifications. So if an achievement involves a measured value, for example 120 stars, this new change here will reflect that by popping up a notification on the screen and adding a progress bar to the Progress tab in the Achievements dialog. If you use Retro Achievements, this is a nifty feature you might want to check out. Next up here, we're talking about Mortal Kombat 1, and it appears that the Switch version of the game is even worse than expected here. There's a brand new patch that's been released for Xbox Series X, PS5, and PC, but not Nintendo Switch. It's being left in the dust, at least for now. Interestingly enough, there's a handful of gameplay adjustments and a whole bunch of character-specific adjustments that are not being reflected on the Switch. There's also been previous patches, and I don't see the Switch here at all. The only Switch patch I see just enables the base game, which was the launch patch. I've got no idea if they just plan on doing a big Switch patch in the future with a whole bunch of stuff, or if they're just kind of trickling stuff to the Switch as they see fit. Based on how this game was ported to the Switch, I'd say it's receiving secondhand treatment, but I could be wrong here. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Moving on, and we're talking about WWE 2K22, and if you're playing this game, the servers will be discontinued as of January 3rd next year. All online modes and functions, including online matches and community creations, will no longer be available. They want you to upgrade to WWE 2K23. And speaking about upgrading, next up we're quickly talking about Linux Mint. And if you've got very recent CPU hardware and you're struggling with Linux kernel 5.15, Linux Mint Edge might be for you. There's a brand new Edge ISO available for Linux Mint 21.2. Instead of the 5.15 kernel, you're getting the 6.2 Linux kernel instead. But moving on, and we're talking about a brand new ROM hack here for Chocobo Land, a game of dice. It's for the Game Boy Advance and it's an English translation. I'll drop a link to it in the description below. They say here the Game Boy Advance port was enhanced with more content and includes more units, spells, and maps. But it is worth pointing out that all text has been translated with AI assistance to make the game playable in English. And speaking about modding, last up here we're talking about Dark Souls 3, and there's a brand new trailer for this, and I'll drop a link to it in the description below, called Dark Souls 3 Ominous Wish. This is a pretty massive overhaul for the game, overhauling textures, model modifications, scenery, and lighting. Now this overhaul has not released just yet, but it is in active development, and you might want to pay attention to this YouTube account because more videos are coming. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Let me know your thoughts about absolutely any of it in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate, save your state.